The Crusades, the battle for Jerusalem in the 12th century. The battle for Jerusalem was at the heart of the crusading movement, particularly during the 12th century, as the Christian forces sought to reclaim the holy city from Muslim control. The significance of Jerusalem in both Christianity and Islam made it a highly contested prize, and the struggle for control over it spanned several decades. The First Crusade, 1096 to 1099, resulted in the city's capture by the Crusaders, but it was the Second and Third Crusades, 12th century, that defined the intense and often tragic battles for Jerusalem. These military campaigns had profound consequences, not only for the city but for the broader geopolitical and religious landscapes of the medieval world. This exploration delves into the battles, key players, and long-term consequences of the struggle for Jerusalem in the 12th century. 1. The First Crusade and the capture of Jerusalem, 1099. The First Crusade, 1096 to 1099, was called by Pope Urban II with the goal of reclaiming Jerusalem from Muslim rule and providing aid to the Byzantine Empire, which was under threat from the Seljuk Turks. The Crusaders, composed of knights, peasants, and clergy, were motivated by religious fervor and the promise of indulgence, forgiveness of sins, for those who participated. Siege and capture of Jerusalem, 1099. After a long and arduous journey across Europe and the Byzantine Empire, the Crusaders arrived at Jerusalem in June 1099, where they laid siege to the city. The siege was marked by both religious fervor and brutal military tactics. The Crusaders were determined to take the city, seeing it as a divine mission to reclaim it for Christianity. On July 15, 1099, after a month of siege, Jerusalem fell to the Crusaders. The victory was celebrated as a miraculous achievement, but it came at a great cost. The Crusaders massacred many of the Muslim and Jewish inhabitants of the city, an act that would set the tone for much of the violence that followed in the Crusades. Establishment of the Kingdom of Jerusalem. After the capture, the Crusaders established the Kingdom of Jerusalem, a Christian state that controlled much of the Holy Land, including the city of Jerusalem. The Crusader state was fragile, surrounded by powerful Muslim forces, and its survival depended on the ability to defend the city and its territories against Muslim forces seeking to reclaim them. The kingdom was governed by Godfrey of Bouillon, who became the first ruler of Jerusalem but declined the title of king, choosing instead the title of Advocate of the Holy Sepulchre, reflecting the city's religious significance. 2. The rise of Saladin and the Second Crusade, 1147 to 1149. The Second Crusade, 1147 to 1149, was largely a response to the rise of Saladin and the growing threat to the Crusader states. After the capture of Jerusalem, Muslim forces in the Levant were fragmented and disorganized. However, in the late 12th century, a strong and charismatic leader emerged. Saladin, Salah ad-Din, the Sultan of Egypt and Syria. Saladin's rise to power. Saladin united the Muslim territories of Egypt, Syria, and Mesopotamia, and his vision was to reclaim Jerusalem and the surrounding areas for Islam. He also sought to unite the Muslim world under his rule, which gave him immense military power. Saladin's forces were well organized and disciplined, and he was seen as a man of great piety and tactical brilliance, winning the loyalty of both his troops and the wider Muslim population. The fall of Edessa and the call for the Second Crusade. In 1144, Edessa, one of the Crusader states, was captured by Zengi, the Turkish Muslim leader, marking a major blow to the Crusaders. The fall of Edessa prompted the Pope Eugene III to call for the Second Crusade, a campaign aimed at recapturing Edessa and reinforcing the Crusader presence in the Holy Land. The Second Crusade, led by European monarchs such as Louis VII of France and Conrad III of Germany, was poorly coordinated and ultimately unsuccessful. The Crusaders failed to regain Edessa, and their efforts to strengthen the Crusader states were hindered by poor leadership, logistical issues, and internal divisions. Saladin's consolidation of power. Saladin's growing power and his subsequent victories over the Crusader states were a key reason the Third Crusade was called. His most significant triumph was the capture of Jerusalem in 1187, which would trigger the Third Crusade and reignite Christian efforts to reclaim the city. 3. The Third Crusade, 1189 to 1192, the Battle for Jerusalem. The Third Crusade, often called the Crusade of Kings, was launched after Saladin's recapture of Jerusalem in 1187. This crusade was led by three of the most powerful rulers of Europe: Richard the Lionheart of England, Philip II of France, and Frederick I Barbarossa of the Holy Roman Empire. The Battle of Hattin, 1187. Before the Crusaders launched their own campaign, Saladin had achieved a decisive victory at the Battle of Hattin in July 1187, where his forces destroyed the Crusader army and captured key figures, including Guy of Lusignan, the king of Jerusalem. This victory paved the way for Saladin to retake Jerusalem, which fell on October 2, 1187. The fall of Jerusalem was a significant blow to the Crusaders and was a rallying cry for the Third Crusade. Richard the Lionheart and the Siege of Acre. Richard the Lionheart played a pivotal role in the Third Crusade. His primary objective was to recapture Jerusalem, but his efforts were focused on securing key coastal cities like Acre, which was a vital port for Crusader operations. The Siege of Acre, 1189 to 1191, was a long and costly battle, and after the Crusaders captured the city, Richard's forces continued to advance southward, engaging Saladin in several skirmishes and battles. Negotiation and the truce. Despite several victories, the Crusaders were unable to retake Jerusalem due to logistical challenges and Saladin's military strength. After months of battles and failed attempts, the Crusaders and Saladin negotiated a truce in 1192. The Treaty of Jaffa allowed Christian pilgrims to visit Jerusalem freely, but the city remained under Muslim control. Richard and Saladin both agreed to peace, although tensions remained. 4. Long-term consequences of the Battle for Jerusalem. The Battle for Jerusalem in the 12th century, particularly during the Second and Third Crusades, had several long-term consequences for both the Crusader and Muslim worlds. Weakened Crusader states. The Crusader states, despite their early successes in the First Crusade, were severely weakened by Saladin's recapture of Jerusalem and the loss of important territories. The Crusaders were never able to fully regain their former strength, and internal divisions among the Crusader leaders further eroded their ability to defend Jerusalem and their other holdings. The failure of the Third Crusade to capture Jerusalem marked the beginning of the slow decline of Crusader power in the Holy Land. The rise of Saladin's legacy. Saladin became a legendary figure in both the Muslim and Christian worlds. His military prowess, leadership, and chivalric conduct earned him admiration, and he was seen as a hero who successfully defended Islam against the Crusaders. His unification of Muslim territories in the Levant created a strong Muslim front that resisted future Crusades and played a key role in the eventual expulsion of the Crusaders from the Holy Land. Religious and cultural divides. The Crusades deepened the religious and cultural divide between Christianity and Islam. The struggle for Jerusalem became symbolic of the larger battle between the two faiths, and it set the tone for the centuries of conflict that followed. The Crusader occupation of Jerusalem and the violent clashes between Muslims and Crusaders marked a long period of hostility, which influenced later interactions between the Christian and Muslim worlds, particularly during the Ottoman Empire's expansion and the European colonial era. 5. Conclusion. The enduring significance of the Battle for Jerusalem. The Battle for Jerusalem in the 12th century was not just a military contest. It was a religious, cultural, and political struggle that shaped the course of history. The First Crusade brought Jerusalem under Christian control, but its loss to Saladin in 1187 marked the beginning of a prolonged struggle for the city. The Second and Third Crusades reflected the religious fervor, ambition, and ultimate disappointment of the crusading movement in the Holy Land. While Jerusalem was never fully reclaimed by the Crusaders after 1187, the legacy of the Crusades lived on in the form of ongoing religious conflict and intellectual exchanges. The Crusades shaped the relationship between Christianity and Islam, as well as the geopolitical landscape of the medieval world, setting the stage for the complex interactions between the two civilizations that continue to affect global politics and relations today. Would you like to explore the religious implications of the Crusades further, the military tactics used in the battles for Jerusalem, or the broader political consequences for the Crusader states?